Hello, good afternoon. My name is Chukuka Bandali. This video is in response to Chimamanda Adichie's The Danger of a Single Story. Chimamanda presented the story in such a brave and conviction about how one culture or one's race or ethnicity can easily be stereotyped by a generation of people who tell stories from one perspective. Um, I too from Nigeria, and my story is as parallel to Chimamanda's. I recall early on when I came to America at the tender age of 15, my first introduction was, hey, there's a black guy over there. And as Chimamanda said in her story, is that she was never consciously about being an African. And the same thing applies to me. I didn't have that conscious awareness that I was black until I came to America. Um, and Chimamanda tells a story about the houseboy named Fide and how the parents uh, told the story that he was from a poor background, and that's all they talked about. And when she discovered that the other brother made the basket, and she couldn't believe that Fide's family had this amount of potential because all she heard about was the fact that he was poor. And when I tell my story, I started with junior high school in eighth grade when I came to America. There was a lot of tension and pressure from other kids because I was different from them. As a matter of fact, they would call me Shaka Zulu, African Booty Scratcher. They would ask me if I live in a hut or I lived with the lions or have I ever killed a lion. During that time, it was kind of hurtful to hear those words. But like Chimamanda said, is that these stories are told with intention of power and control. When one race or one ethnicity or one tribe tells a story to belittle or to make the other feel inferior, that had always been the motive. And I recall that, during those times, those students were trying to make me less than. So as time went on, I didn't quite realize why they perceived me in that manner. And as I began to watch television in America, I began to notice that most of the portrayal of Africa was mostly jungles and the safari, and kids were hungry, um, and they didn't show the cities and the industrial aspect of Africa that quite resembled the Western world. As Chimamanda talked about her roommate in America who did not know that she could use a stove because she had that single story in her mind. And when I started teaching adult parole, I had similar experience. Students who were asking me once they discovered that I was from Nigeria, or as they call it, Africa, as a country. They began to ask me the same questions if I ever killed a lion. And as time went on, I began to understand where their perspective came from. And I began, instead of being upset, I began to use that as a teaching moment by educating those folks who had a very negative experience about Africa. As a matter of fact, one of my students who asked me this about a year ago, if Africa was all jungle, I took him into my office and showed him a YouTube video on the city of Lagos, and he was so surprised. And he said to me, why do they always show Africa that way? I said, well, it's called propaganda. But I told him, I said, you need to know that, you do not believe one single story. You have to be able to, get education, and that's why you are here to learn, because education is power. So, like Chimamanda stated, these single stories are not always true, but they could be true, but they also are not the entire story. And she referenced that if she focused only on the negativity of her life, she's going to miss the other aspects that formed her to be who she is today. And I think that society can do a better job of focusing on the entirety and not believing in single stories, because this single stories has proven to be dangerous in our belief system, in our worldview of other races, other cultures, and other ethnicity and other gender. So, as a cultural intelligent leader, one of my goals is to not buy into the single story, but to be well diverse and well immersed by taking the time to learn more about other cultures other than my own. Thank you very much.